This afternoon, we have a very special guest, Dr. Christopher Keel. I've met Dr. Keel on several occasions and have always found his perspective very thought-provoking and quite pertinent to manufacturing and distribution. He's able to distill very complex economic theory down to the salient points that are really most important for manufacturers and distributors. The challenge, I think, for many of us as we kind of look into the crystal ball for 2021 is that there are likely dozens of things that we could be mindful of and maybe should be mindful of that might affect our day-to-day operations. As we were all preparing for today's session, all of us presenters got together and did a bit of a brainstorming session and tried to boil some of those potential trends and challenges down to just four that are going to be likely the most impactful. Let's go ahead and talk a bit about the first trend and or challenge. Dr. Keel, without a doubt, I think one can probably say that 2020 was unlike any year that any of us have experienced, at least in the past generation, if not our lifetime. The COVID pandemic obviously had a pretty devastating impact on many industries, most especially, obviously, the service industry, but we also saw some tremendous impact to manufacturing and distribution, especially on supply chains. So as we look at this first possible trend or challenge for 2021, what do you think will be the lingering impact of the COVID pandemic and maybe most specifically its impact on supply chains?
Yeah, this was going to go down as the year that the just-in-time system died. I mean, for years and years, we were looking at that as the answer to our dreams, that we would no longer have to deal with all the inventory management and the stuff that we needed would just magically show up when we needed it. And then the whole system broke down in 2020. Where that is really affecting the industry is that now inventory is back. Now we're going to have to start wondering about the reliability of our supply chains. We are seeing them shift. China was the default for many companies because it was easy. We knew how to deal with China. They had the infrastructure. Everything was fine. Now all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, now I'm going to have to worry about dealing with India and Vietnam and Mexico and countries in Africa that I'm not even really sure where they are. So it upset a system that was fairly routine. At one point, we had something like 40% of global cargo completely stalled. Even today, the auto industry is not in a position to produce the cars that are in demand because they can't get parts. They can't get chips. This whole system was so smooth and now is nothing close to smooth.
Wow, that's really, really insightful. Any thoughts on how we can kind of smooth some of the hills and bumps for 2021 at all?
Yeah, I think there'll be three different strategies. Number one, of course, is diversifying, trying to find other producers, other sources other than those that we've been using in the past. That's been taking place for a number of years already. Number two is doing a lot more sourcing internally. There has been a bit of a movement back to nearshoring and reshoring, particularly companies that are now using more technology and more robotics instead of labor. The main reason that a lot of companies moved overseas was to take advantage of low labor costs, low production costs. Now companies can compete with those low-income countries with robotics and technology, and they are, and that's allowing companies to move production back closer to home. The more that you can have things within your own control. And if you're sourcing from the United States, transportation is not as big an issue, command and control is not as big an issue, marketing is easier, management is easier. And then probably the third issue is back to that technology, and that is learning to use the advances that we now have in communications to be a lot more aware of that supply chain. It was something we took for granted for a long time, and it's now become a high priority. And we're going to have to be much more adept at how we use our logistics partners.
Well, that sounds really interesting. I know attending some of the manufacturing trade shows over the past few years, the hot topic was definitely reshoring and nearshoring. So it sounds like that's going to be a potential critical consideration for 2021.